Check it out. Think she's lost? Maybe looking for her husband's squadron. Laughter rippled through music, his group. Davis, emboldened, stood up and ambled over to her table. He leaned against it, crossing his arms in a way he probably thought was casual and disarming. He began, a smirk playing on his lips. That's a pretty serious jacket you've got there. You a big fan of naval aviation? Lauren Taylor didn't look up immediately. She finished chewing, took a slow sip of water, and then lifted her gaze to meet his. Her eyes were a calm, steady blue. You could say that, she said, her voice even and quiet. The lack of a reaction seemed to throw him, but only for a second. The performance was for his buddies, who were now watching intently. Right on. Well, you know, we all got our call signs around here. It's kind of a pilot thing. He gestured vaguely toward the flight line beyond the windows. I bet a cool jacket like that comes with a cool call sign. What do they call you? Top Gun's girlfriend. His friends snickered. The joke landed exactly as he'd intended. It was meant to be a little sharp, a little dismissive, a way of putting her in her place as an outsider, a spouse, a civilian, anything but one of them. He was expecting a blush, a flustered denial, maybe an indignant retort. He was not expecting her to set her fork down with quiet precision, look him directly in the eye, and answer without a trace of emotion. Black Mamba. The name hung in the air. Davis's smirk faltered. It wasn't the answer he was built to process. It was too specific, too aggressive. He'd asked a simple woman her call sign as a joke, a rhetorical jab. But the answer he got felt like a loaded weapon for a moment that stretched into an awkward silence. The mess hall noise seemed to fade. The young corporal stood there suddenly, feeling like he had stumbled into a cage he didn't understand. The name Black Mamba making him freeze. Davis blinked, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face before bravado rushed back in to fill the void. He forced a laugh a little too loud, a little too sharp. Black Mamba, that's a good one. Seriously though, that's an official jacket. You can get in a lot of trouble for wearing stuff you're not supposed to be wearing on base. It's a UCMJ thing. He was digging in, doubling down. The audience of his peers made retreat impossible. Lauren picked up her fork again, her movements economical and deliberate. I'm aware of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Corporal. Are you? He pressed, his voice rising slightly. Because that name tape says Taylor. And those patches. He squinted at a circular patch on her right shoulder depicting a skull wearing a pilot's helmet. That's VM Fat 101. The sharpshooters, they're a Hornet training squadron. That's fleet replacement. You're telling me you're a Hornet pilot? The challenge was clear. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Several nearby Marines, older and more seasoned, began to watch the exchange with a mixture of annoyance and weary resignation. They'd seen this movie before. A young boot full of vinegar picking a fight he couldn't win. But this felt different. The woman's stillness was unnerving. I've spent time with the sharpshooters, Lauren replied, her tone giving away nothing. She took another bite of her chicken. Davis was getting frustrated. Her calm was a wall he couldn't seem to breach. He felt his authority, the authority of his uniform in his world slipping. He needed to reassert it. Okay, look, he said, dropping the pretense of politeness. Let's see some ID. If you're authorized to be wearing that, you'll have a Sikh card that says so. Without a word, Lauren reached into a pocket on her flight suit's leg, pulled out a wallet, and extracted her common access card. She held it out to him. Davis snatched it. He looked down, expecting to see a dependent ID, a civilian contractor card, something that would confirm his suspicions and validate his public challenge. He saw the green background of an active duty officer. He saw the name Taylor Lauren E. And he saw the rank 04 Major. A cold knot formed in his stomach. This was a problem, a big one. But his pride was a stubborn beast. He couldn't just hand it back and apologize. Not in front of his friends. He had to find a different way out. A way that didn't involve him looking like a complete fool. He squinted at the card, pretending to scrutinize it. This could be fake, he mumbled. The accusation sounding weak even to his own ears. The photos a little grainy. It was taken at the Deer's office in Yuma. Their camera is terrible, Lauren said, still without a hint of anger, but the chip works. There's a scanner at the chow line entrance if you'd like to verify it. She was calling his bluff. Now he was truly cornered. To back down was to lose face. To escalate was to march deeper into a minefield. He chose the minefield. "I don't need a scanner," he said, his voice hard. He tapped a finger on the jacket's other patch, a smaller, more intricate one over her heart. "What about this one? The one with the delta wing and the target. That's a WTI patch. You know what that is, hmm? That's a weapons and tactics instructor. That's the best of the best. You get that at MWTI East 1. It's 7 weeks of hell. You don't just get one of those, you earn it with blood." He was practically sneering now. The words a torrent of misplaced righteousness. He was defending the honor of an institution he felt she was mocking by her very presence. As his finger touched the patch, the missile's noise seemed to distort in Lauren's ears, replaced for a split second by a different set of sounds. The hygiene groan of an FA-18's airframe straining against physics, the metallic taste of adrenaline. Below the sprawling moonless dark of the desert floor, a canvas of nothingness punctuated by the sudden terrifying bloom of anti-aircraft fire. The acrid smell of ozone and sweat inside her cockpit. The red glow of the instrument panel painting her face in demonic light. A voice in her headset strained with static and fear. "Viper 11. We are taking effective fire. Winchester on flares. We need an exit now." It was a flash. A memory seared into the back of her mind. A ghost that lived inside the very threads the corporal was touching with such disdain. The memory vanished as quickly as it came, leaving only the dull clatter of the mess hall in its wake. Her eyes refocused on the young Marine in front of her. His face was flushed, his self-importance radiating off him. He had no idea what that patch represented. To him, it was a symbol. To her, it was a scar. Across the room, Master Gunnery Sergeant Cole, a man whose face was a roadmap of 3 decades in the Corps, lowered his coffee cup. He'd been watching the whole pathetic spectacle. At first, he'd written it off as a corporal needing a new hobby, but the woman's impossible calm, and the corporal's mention of the WTI patch had snagged his attention. He looked closer at her jacket, the VM Fat 101 patch, the WTI patch, and a third one, a subdued, almost hidden patch from a deployment tour. That specific combination was rare, almost unheard of. Then he saw the name tape, Taylor. Cole's blood ran cold. The name, the patches, the call sign he'd overheard the corporal mock. Black Mamba. It wasn't a joke. It was a legend. A story they told new pilots to scare them straight. A story he'd heard from a shaken recon team leader who owed his life to a pilot with that name. He didn't get up. He didn't yell. A man with his rank and experience knew that a public dressing down of a corporal was beneath him and would only make the situation worse. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone with a steady hand, and scrolled to a number he rarely used. He stood and walked toward the exit, thumbing the call button. The phone on the other end was answered on the second ring. Colonel Matthews. "Sir," Cole said, his voice low and urgent. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Cole. Sorry to bother you, sir, but I think you need to get down to the 22 area mess hall right away." There was a pause. "What is it, Master Guns?" the colonel asked, his voice tight with annoyance at the interruption. Cole took a breath. "Sir, I think Major Taylor is here. The pilot from the Kandahar extraction, the one they call Black Mamba." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Cole could almost hear the gears turning in the colonel's head. When he finally spoke, the annoyance was gone, replaced by a stark, cold alarm. "I'm on my way." Inside the office of Colonel Matthews, the wing operations officer, the phone clicked back into its cradle with a sharp crack. He stared at the wall for a second, his mind racing. Major Taylor, here. He had approved her temporary orders to Myanmar to consult on a new training syllabus, but he hadn't expected her to arrive for another day, and he certainly didn't expect her first interaction to be a confrontation in a mess hall. "Sergeant," he barked at the aide sitting outside his office. "Get me the service record for a Major Lauren E. Taylor call sign Black Mamba, and I mean right now." A few frantic keystrokes later, the file appeared on the colonel's monitor. He leaned forward, his eyes scanning the lines of black and white text as if seeing them for the first time. The official summary was stark, stripped of all emotion, which only made it more powerful. Taylor, Lauren E. Major, USMC, Mo 7523, FA-18 fighter pilot. Total flight hours 2847. Combat hours 612. The citation scrolled down the page. A litany of valor. Air Medal with Combat Vine 3rd Award. Navy and Marine Corps Combination Medal with Combat. And there it was. Distinguished Flying Cross. The summary was brief, almost offensively, so for the action it described for heroism and extraordinary achievement in aerial flight. After her aircraft sustained critical damage from enemy ground fire, Major Taylor, displaying consummate airmanship and courage, successfully flew her crippled FA-18 Hornet over 80 nautical miles of hostile territory to a safe landing, thereby saving a valuable combat asset and her own life. He read on. Her billet history was a checklist of the most demanding jobs in marine aviation: fleet pilot, forward air controller, weapons, and tactics instructor at MAWT's 1. The file noted her instructor call sign was Viper, but her combat call sign, the one earned in the crucible of battle, was listed right beside it. Black Mamba Matthews felt a surge of cold fury. One of the most decorated combat pilots of a generation was being hassled in his mess hall by some boot corporal. He grabbed his cover from his desk. Get the wing commander on the phone. He snapped at his aide as he strode toward the door. Tell him we have a code red situation at the 22 area mess. No, not a security threat, a respect threat. And get the base sergeant major. I want him to meet me there 5 minutes ago. Back in the mess hall, Corporal Davis was feeling the intoxicating rush of having an audience. He had her ID. He had challenged her credentials, and she had offered no real defense beyond quiet one-word answers. In his mind, he was winning. He saw her silence not as the patient tolerance of a superior officer, but as the tacit admission of a fraud. He decided it was time to end it, to deliver the final blow. All right, I've seen enough, he declared, pocketing her sack card as if confiscating it. I'm not buying it. That jacket, those patches, that stolen veiler. You and I are going to take a little walk over to the Provost Marshal's office. Falsifying a government ID, impersonating an officer. You're in a world of trouble. He gestured to his two friends who, caught up in the drama, stood up, and moved to flank the table, effectively blocking Lauren's path. The act transformed the scene. It was no longer a verbal spat. It was a physical detention. A low murmur went through the room. A line had been crossed. The air crackled with tension. Lauren Taylor simply looked at the three young Marines arrayed against her, her expression unreadable, and slowly placed a napkin on her tray. Just as Davis opened his mouth to issue another command, the main doors of the mess hall swung open with such force that they banged against the stoppers. The ambient noise of the room vanished as if a switch had been flipped. Framed in the doorway stood Colonel Matthews, his face a thundercloud. Beside him was the 6 feet 4 inches monolith that was the base sergeant major, his chest covered in a career's worth of ribbons. And a step behind them was a brigadier general, the wing commander himself, a man whose presence on the ground floor of a mess hall was so rare as to be almost mythical. They were flanked by the master gunnery sergeant who had made the call and a sharp-looking female lieutenant colonel from the general staff. The 5 of them moved as one unit, their boots echoing on the linoleum floor. They didn't scan the room. Their eyes were fixed on one point. The small table by the window. The entire population of the mess hall, from the newest private to the most seasoned staff, NCO, was frozen, many of them halfway to their feet. Trays were held in midair. Forks paused inches from mouths. This wasn't just brass. This was a divine intervention. Corporal Davis and his friends went pale. Their bravado evaporated, replaced by a primal, gut-wrenching fear. Davis's spine snapped so straight it was a miracle it didn't break. If you like the videos, please support them with a super thanks.